You are listening to the Bail Post. Welcome to episode 59 of the Bail Post. And on today's episode, we have as our guest the new president of PBUS, David Stuckman. David, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Well, David, I like to research people when they're going to be on our podcast, but why don't we just start with what is PBUS? I mean, I think we assume everybody knows that in our world, but I don't think everybody knows.
Well, PBUS is the Professional Bail Bondsmen of the United States, and it's bondsmen throughout the United States that try to help and show other agents education and how to work through the courtroom system and how to make bail profession a more professional industry.
How long has PBUS been around? Because, I've known about PBUS for a long time, but there's many, many years where I did not go because, I have a daughter who's special needs and she had a bone marrow transplant when she was 5, about 12 years ago. So I always have limited my travel for a long period of time to just Texas because of her. So how long has PBUS been around?
It's been around longer than 40 years.
Wow.
That's a long time.
It seems like PBUS, from just my knowledge, has had a period of growth and then kind of had a period where I would even say maybe there was some infighting or controversy, and it seems to be kind of going through a period of growth again.
It is. And you're right. We've had when you have different administrations, they have different philosophies. And with that, you have the shifting of attitudes and ideas and it does, but we're growing now. We're back to getting.
I think that's a nice way of saying it, because I always say when you get a room full of bondsmen, you got a room full of hot air.
Yeah, and it's like herding cats. I love Dudley Goolsby's a friend of mine. He used to say it's like herding cats, and that's my favorite saying.
Well, I've heard that before, but I've also heard bondsmen. They've worked really hard to get where they are. They're businessmen, and we're in personal relationship businesses or industries. And so sometimes we can feel like we know better than everyone else sometimes. And so but I think that's in every organization. I mean, PBT has had a period where it was kind of having some difficulty getting along, and we were split, and we've never really been through that before. And so we've kind of ended that period, and now we're in a period of, I think, substantial growth, but we had to go through that first period to get to this period, I think.
Yes. I mean, I'm an associate member of NACDA, which is National Criminal Defense Attorneys. I'm not an attorney, but I did join that to find out what they were doing. And I've talked to many of them, same thing. They have egos bigger than bondsmen do, I think, sometimes. And they'll say, well, would you come speak about this great case that you've done there in whatever state? And they says, I'm not going to share my secrets with other bondsmen. And they have that kind of so yeah, it's every organization has that kind of
I saw in your bio on the PBUS website that you're a master certified bail agent, and there's the little trademark beside it. What does that mean?
Master, that's a good question, because I was asked that just the other day. They asked me, well, what school can I go to get this degree? It's not a degree at a university. First of all, you have to become a CBA, which is a certified bail agent. And what that is PBUS has a core of classes, 6 classes to be exact. You take the class and you take the test. Then after you're the CBA, then you can fill out an application to be a master certified bail agent. And what that really is you have to be in good standing with the court system, be a bondsman for 5 years at the very minimum, be in good standing with PBUS. You have to have shown that you're a leader in the community. I'm a master. I was a little league baseball coach and basketball coach and stuff like that. And then you have to get letters from 2 senior judges saying that you're a pillar of the community. And it just shows great character. And that's how then you fill out that form, and then a board member reviews it, verifies it, and then signs it. And that's usually me that signs it. And then that's how you become a master certified bail agent.
Well, you've been a bondsman since 1986, which actually is longer than I've been practicing law. But before that, you were a bounty hunter. And one of the things, unless you're second generation, third generation, and we have those in our industry, I mean, I don't think we wake up one morning and we go, you know what? I'm going to be a bondsman. We're not born going, I want to be a bondsman. So what brought you to this world of being a bounty hunter and then a bail agent?
Well, I was an insurance agent and had gotten a divorce, and my ex-wife moved to Manhattan Junction City area. So the insurance company said, "Well, we need an investigator to do some investigations. Would you do that?" And I said, "Yes." And I just happened to go to work for Walt Gatchie, who was a bondsman,
Hmm.
as his investigator, which turned into being his bounty hunter for 5 years. And then I realized, I think I can make more money being a bondsman than chasing people and that. So that's how I got into the bail bond business.
Well, I did see when you were working for, I guess, Getchy Bail Bonds, there was a one of your recoveries that was mentioned in the news, and I'm sure that there's more than one. But what does it take in Kansas to be a bounty hunter? You know, like in Texas, you can't arrest somebody as you don't have the right to arrest. You have to have a license, be a licensed private investigator, or you just have to call the police. I mean, what's the rules in Kansas for for bounty hunters?
Up until about 5 years ago, we put it in a package when we got our continuing education package put together. We went to the attorney general and he said, "Well, I want you to have some regulations on bounty hunters." And we said, "Well, whatever." He said, "Well, they have to be registered with the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, and to register there. We have all these people that are claiming to be bounty hunters that have no clue." And we didn't disagree with that at all. So, in order to be a bounty hunter and not be a bondsman, just a straight up bounty hunter, you have to file with the Kansas Bureau of Investigation. I really don't know what all they have to do, but I know they have to show they know how to handle a gun and take a test in that. Now, bondsmen always have the right to make arrests in Kansas. We can go,
Now,
yeah, we do, yes.
this is one of those areas I'd like to talk about because I don't know if we have before. But why is it that some states give bondsmen the right to arrest, but other states don't? I mean, what's the argument for that? You've been around for a while, so what's the different argument?
Well, I think the way the laws go down the road in each state. I mean, in Texas, I was totally amazed that I couldn't go down there and make an arrest, even though I had all the creds and this and that. I had to become a Tally member. I'm a member of Tally, Texas Association of Licensed Investigators. So I
Hmm.
make sure I have the right to make an arrest down there. But you take that and all the controversy in the world about all these bounty hunters and stuff. I really can't tell you. Just each state have different laws. For example, in the state of Colorado, you register with the insurance commissioner. You don't have to register with the court. And once you're a member bondsman in Colorado, you can ride anywhere in the state. You just show
Hmm.
your ID and you
Well,
can
that's the way
be.
it is in Louisiana too. I mean, I think once
Yes,
you're approved by the Department of Insurance or their equivalent, you can ride anywhere in the state.
yeah.
So on your bio, it says that you became in 1992. You became a bail agent full time, opening your office in Junction City, Kansas. So I'm assuming from that from '86 to '92, you were a part time bondsman. Is that not right? Or is
No, well, you can say that because I was a full time parent. It was limited what I
ah
could do. I couldn't. That's really where it come to be because I had my children then, and they were in grade school all the way to high school. I really didn't get full time bondsman bounty hunter until the kids were old enough to be left alone.
at the age that you got a divorce, or not just at the age, but the time you got a divorce? I mean, I would think it would be um, unique or not very often that the husband would end up with the children. So, I mean, you kind of have this situation where you raise two kids.
Yeah, you reverse the roles. I didn't have them in the summer. I had them in the winter,
Hmm.
and my ex-wife who lived in Maine, she had them in the beautiful state of Maine. So they had, they adjusted well. But for me to raising kids and being a bondsman and all the horror stories I can tell you about having a being the dad and your daughter's getting ready to have the time of her life and I don't know what to do. Or I had my school teacher one time tell me she was in fifth grade and the school teacher says, Cassie is of the age she needs a trainer's bra. And I go, oh, God. But what we did, we had a plan. The teacher says, I tell you what, do let's meet at Dillard's at 5:30 on a whatever diet it was, and it'll be a oh hi, and then I will help her and you leave us alone. And that's how she got her first training balls with her fifth
Your
grade
daughter
teacher.
and my daughter will kill me because I have a similar story. Because my youngest daughter had a bone marrow transplant when she was 5,
Uh-huh.
and so my oldest daughter during that time became a woman, and she came running into my office one day, and she's like, "Dad, we have to go home." And I'm like, "No, we don't. I mean, we've got hours before you just got out of school." She's like, "No, Dad, we have to go home." And I was like, ding, 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 ding. Oh my God,
Well,
I'm a single dad. I've got to do this really important thing. And I'm like, I am going to fail so miserably. And I did. I mean, I did. I was terrible. And all these things that I want to be, all I want to be, and what I actually turned out to be. Because I mean, when we were going back to the office after it was all done, I looked at her and I said, "We can never talk about this ever again."
well, yeah. And my daughter found out about it years later, but she was okay with it. But at that time, I was just petrified and scared.
Yeah. My oldest daughter and I are very close. We have very similar personalities. We joke a lot. She's a lot like her mom in other ways, but we're very close. And she's out of college, working, has a serious boyfriend. I'm like, grandchildren. I need grandchildren.
Mhm.
but I love kids. I mean, and my youngest is a freshman in college, just finished her first year. She had a bone marrow transplant because she didn't make enough platelets, and now her platelets are normal. She has arm issues still because she was born with a birth defect, but she is this really smart kid, and she's just like her mother. She's the list maker in the family, and my wife is also a list maker. So when we go on vacation, the two of them, it's hilarious because they're planning the whole trip, and Darby and I are just like laughing the whole time. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, I don't know how you are a single parent because, one of the things that we did growing up is I would tell the kids, do not talk to your mom like that. And my wife would say, do not talk to your dad like that. I mean, if you're a single parent, who's defending you when the kids are going through this crazy phase?
When we got a divorce, my ex-wife and me agreed, and we put it in our divorce decree. We would never say ill words about our spouse or ex-spouse, and we will never say that. And that was one of the best things that we could do, because when they said mom's doing that, egging me on and say mom did this, mom did that, well, your mother is your mother, and you should obey her. And they would not like it. The other thing that they didn't like is I used to tell them, because I didn't know what I was doing. I said, well, I got this manual, this parents manual, and the manual says what I'm supposed to do here, and this is what we're going to do. And one time I come up with a philosophy. I asked my daughter, she was in 7th grade, well, what would you do if you were in my shoes and you had your child with this problem? She said, well, the first thing I would do is throw that dadgum book away.
Oh my
they,
God. I did the same thing because my daughter and I went through this rough patch where she was, 13, and, I was the devil. She wouldn't talk to me. I couldn't hug her. God forbid I hug her. And so I bought a book on, same thing on how to deal with kids. But my book was about how to deal with teenage pregnancy, how to deal with all this. It didn't have a chapter on when the kids' hormones are out of whack and they won't talk to you.
I agree.
Well,
Yeah.
the other thing I learned about you is that you are a general agent for American Surety and you have a bunch of sub-agents. Talk about how that came about, because I don't think a lot of people know what a general agent is in these days.
Well, like I said, I went to work for Walt Gatch, and he was the general agent for American Surety. And when he sold it out, we made it in the contract with Jack Whitlock that I would be the general agent, which means the only way you can be an American Surety agent in Kansas is to work for me. And that gives me the control of the state, where if somebody screws up, I have the power to yank their license and tell them, no, you can't write for it. They can go work for another agent. Another company. I
But it
don't
also
care.
gives you a lot of, responsibility in making sure
Oh,
people are taking
yes.
care of business. Because
Oh, yes.
if they get out of control, or you're not watching them and they kind of take advantage of it, you're on the line for that.
Yep, that's right.
So
That is one of the, and yeah, but my hands are full. Yes, they are with that. It's lots of times.
I've heard several times, that the day of the general agents is kind of coming to the end, especially, as time passes and we have, we have all these fight over rates and stuff. How, what does the general agent market look like to you today?
I would say in 10 years, there won't be any more general agents like me at a state. I don't know that there is any more state general agents. You'd have to ask the other insurance companies, but I don't think I'm the last one of the American Surety.
Well, it's one of those things when you say general agent, it's one of those things that it's under the radar. It's
Yeah.
always under the radar. It's just because, we have this agent and they work for the insurance company. And so putting somebody between them, while it can have benefits, but it can also cause, I mean, I've seen it take some general agents down too.
Mhm.
And
Now
so
you
it's,
have to be careful.
yeah. So what
Yeah.
kind of safeguards do you keep in place so that that won't happen?
Well, they have to report, and I approve all the large bonds. And in order to do that, they got to research them before they come to me. We had a pretty good system, and I'm not going to say bad things, but we had well, I can say it. Captira just kind of when they got hit, that kind
Oh,
of I'm really feeling naked, for lack of better words, vulnerable. I've lost everything that was in the and Mr. Potter told me, Dave, you're one of the 20%. We won't be able to get your stuff back. So that really I'm kind of had some stressful nights.
for the people who do not know, Captira had an issue. Some people would say it was ransomware.
Mm-hmm.
Some people would say we don't know for sure what it is, but as a result, there was a data breach and it was locked down. And for whatever reason, they're still having issues about getting data back. And some people, I mean, I've heard horror stories from a lot of people about getting their data back, and I've not heard anybody say they can't or they're not going to get it back. But let's just say, okay, so you're one of those agents for Captura, and you're not going to get your data back, which you relied upon everything in the cloud with Captura. So what are you doing to? I mean,
We're rebuilding. We're
yeah,
rebuilding. We're
okay,
trying
that's
to.
what you're doing to
Yeah,
rebuild your database.
we are, and we've been luckily in Kansas. The Kansas courts got hacked about a year ago,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
they had their problems. So when I go to the judge, says, "Your Honor, this has happened. I can prove." They're very understanding. They says, "Okay, well, we'll see what we can do." And the sheriff will give me they ordered the sheriff to give me information and stuff like when I'm looking for people. But I lost more than that because we'd have people paying the moms and dads would be
Sure.
paying the forfeitures that they indemnified the bond, and I lost all that bookkeeping and oh Lord, so the people owe me money, and then I filed for my cyber insurance. I had cyber insurance, so I filed that claim with them. They said, "Well, you really are not out the money. You can go back and get your books and see your deposits, and but a lot of work. I'm going to have an accounting bill for the next 5 or 6 months that it's going to be atrocious trying to go because we didn't. That wasn't the direction we were going. We had everything. We had our applications on, so we were really. That's a personal problem for me, and I don't want to labor it, but yeah, it's the rebuilding has really been tough for me.
When I found that out, when somebody was telling me that that was going on, I first thing I did was make some phone calls and say, "What backup systems do you have to ensure this doesn't happen to you?" Because I mean, if you get caught in this, it's bad,
Yeah, yes, it is. I
and it's
mean,
not something that we've ever thought about. We thought go digital and you're going to be great. That's the way to go.
well, and I remember because I told all my agents we had a big tornado in Cimarron, Kansas. It was wiped out the whole town, which wiped out my bail agent's office. Now he was a farmer, he lived out on the farm, and I said, "See now, if you would have had Captira, we'd have all that data." Well, just the reverse. Those agents that was resistant kept their data. They're okay. They kept their hard written or hard copies, but a lot of them didn't, and a lot of them are reminded me of that daily. So
Well, I've
I
got
don't.
calls from several Capterra agents. I saw one. I was visiting a client just last week who is a Capterra agent, and they were saying they're still without their data. They're still,
Yeah.
um, I mean, they stuck. They don't know what to do. And then I had one company tell me that they could give them their data, but they would have to take it to a different company to decrypt it or to convert
Mm-hmm.
it to something usable. But they wouldn't give it to them unless they signed a release because I guess they're worried about getting sued, and they refused to sign it. So I know that there's a lot of hurt feelings and a lot of ugly things going on, and I'm just I have all the sympathy for you because had no idea you were going through it as well. Because we have insurance companies that use Captira as the way they track their bail bonds internally, and they're having the same issues.
Yeah, I've actually been caught in the courtroom where the attorneys would say, "Well, what's going on?" Because you used to send them a text message the Sunday
Mhm.
before court, remind them of the court. You're not doing that anymore. Then, of course, I have to share my story with them. But I mean, in that we had every attorney's name that we come across. We'd put it in there to a list of
Mhm.
attorneys or the county attorneys. Lots of times, I got their cell phone numbers and everything, and I lost all that. I mean, and it's going to take a while to rebuild.
Wow. Wow, wow,
Yeah,
wow. We've got a couple of counties that require the bondsman to give notice of hearings. I mean, it's not just good business practice, it's a
yeah.
requirement of the local bail bond board, and you have to have proof in your files that you gave it. And I have a client in that county who was using Captira. And so, I mean, they can find out who who's all on the docket, that's all their cases, but
Mhm.
if they didn't have a backup file, they don't have the information. And so
Yeah.
they were like, what do we do? We got notice to all these people, but we couldn't get a hold of these people because we didn't have any contact information. It's all on Captira. And I'm like, at the very least, call the sheriff's office and find out their number on the bond because it's on the bond. And so at least you'll have that. But also be proactive. Call the courts if you weren't
Yeah.
able to give them notice and see if you can get it rescheduled before it's a forfeiture. Tell them why.
Mhm.
And they
Yeah.
have had some luck with that, just like you. I mean,
Yeah.
courts, everybody just wants to know we're taking care of business. And if you have an issue, they're more than happy to work with you on it as long as they know you're taking care of business.
Yeah. If anybody else is ever going to do this, I'd always tell them weekly,
Mm.
back that up. And we could have probably with Captira, but we thought it was backed up into the cloud. The laziness. I'll just claim I was lazy. I didn't do it right.
Well, I mean, look, I use some cloud-based systems and I haven't thought about that issue as well. I mean,
Mhm.
do we need to back up and download data? And that's a good point. Maybe I should look at that. But I mean, that could be a whole episode of what's going on with
Yeah.
Captira. And I mean, I had no idea. But let's continue on. How long have you been a member of PBUS?
I'm going to say probably 30 years.
Well, you were Bell Agent of the Year back
Hmm.
in 2015, and
Oh,
so
okay. Yeah.
that I kind of think of that as the Walk of Fame, the Wall of Fame, whatever. Bondsman, and we in the equivalent in Texas is Bondsman of the Year. So congratulations on that. That means to me that means something in our industry. You're doing something right, and the industry has recognized you for doing something right, and so that speaks well of you.
Yeah.
I mean, it
Thank
could all have been just a lie, but no,
you.
no.
No, thank you. I'm very honored to have that award.
So let's talk about how bail is written in Kansas. I always like to talk about, how bail is written in different states because we all know that bail is regulated at the state level. And so kind of tell me how bail is written. Do you have property bondsmen and corporate bondsmen in Kansas?
Yes, we do. We call them property bondsmen and insurance bondsmen. We have those two
Okay.
distinctions, and they are like you said, they put up their property. Some people call them hip pocket bondsmen. Suppose they got money in their hip pocket, post the bond. The property is the best description. They filed with the court, says I have the financial capability of paying the forfeiture if need be, and here's my letter of credit from the bank or whatever. Then you have obviously the insurance agents. Those are the only two.
So is bail regulated at the local level or does it regulate at the state level in
It's
Kansas?
regulated by the insurance companies are regulated obviously by the insurance commissioner. The property bondsmen answer to the court that they register in. So
So is it just by court or is it by court and county or is it,
for the
when,
property bondsman, yes. For the
oh,
property
wow.
bondsman, yes.
And so for the corporate bondsman, you go to the Department of Insurance and then you're approved and you can write bail in any county
Well, you still have to give them a general power of attorney, and they want a
for
picture ID and things
for
like
each
that.
county that you want to write in
Yes.
or
Well,
okay.
each district, there's 35 different districts in the state of Kansas. Sometimes it's only one county. Like Shawnee County is Topeka, there's one county, but there you get out in western Kansas, there'll be 9 or 10 different counties in one district.
Oh, so when
They'll
you're
be
saying
very,
district, is that district court?
yeah, district courts, they're
Okay.
district
And
courts.
so you are
So
approved by the Department of Insurance and you file your
mhm,
general power in each district that you want
mhm.
to write bail.
Yeah, out in western Kansas, a lot of the magistrate judges are not even attorneys. They can
Sure.
be school teachers or whatever. So,
That's the way it
but
is in
they got to have
Texas.
at least one. They have to have at least one um, um, judge that has a law degree and be a lawyer. That way they know that. But a lot of, and if you are a magistrate in that court, you have to live in that county.
Hmm.
It's a big deal in Western Kansas because there's just not that many cases. You can take those 7 or 8 counties in that one district, and they may only have 15 or 20 felony cases, major cases in the whole year.
What about misdemeanor courts?
Now that can be city bonds, and again in district court. And misdemeanor bonds are mainly if they're in the city, it's in the city. But if the crime took place outside city limits, goes to district court.
Okay.
And probably you take those small counties I was talking about. A lot of them don't have city courts. They're just there's some
Sure.
counties out there only have a population of 2,000 people in the whole county, so they just
Hmm.
district court is their court system.
So, okay, like in Texas, there's a couple of ways that a bondsman can end their liability uh, before before the case is over or before there's a forfeiture. Like, if someone is arrested and in jail somewhere, we can notify the sheriff that they're in jail, and once he verifies it, our liability is off or over, but we're still responsible for return costs. But also, we can request a warrant if we have a valid reason to do so, and then we can use that warrant to arrest them, and then we're off the liability after we return them back to the county or to custody. Is there anything like that in Kansas where you
No, I
can
wish there
end?
was. That we wish we had. If they're in another jurisdiction, what they'll do is they'll wait till they fail to appear, then they'll put a warrant out for them failure to appear. Then, like you said, we got to bring him back. But if he's arrested, let's say he was in Manhattan and he was going to California and he got arrested in, I'll say, Dodge City, Kansas, which is on
Mhm.
the way. I know as soon as he bonds out, he's going to continue his path to California. I would love to be able to put a hold on him, and I cannot. That
Wow.
is an unfortunate thing. Yes. About 3 or 4 years ago, we passed a law in Kansas. We mimicked it after Oklahoma. And if they do not put the
Mhm.
NCIC hold nationwide on them, the county attorney can't seek judgment on the forfeiture. And lots of times you're right. They'll say, I'll do neighboring states, but I don't want them brought back.
And I really do like that version of the statute from Oklahoma. I think we would have issues with it in Texas on getting it through the legislature, but I mean, it's a good rule. If you don't want them, then I mean, bail is not intended to be a moneymaker for the county. And so if you don't want them, then why are you seeking a bond forfeiture?
Right.
Mm, mm.
Yeah,
Okay, so we've
that's
talked
good.
about how bail is written, how it's regulated, how do you end your liability? You don't have that. You can't end your liability before forfeiture or the case being over. But what about after forfeiture? What are the rules in Kansas about a time to get them to back to court?
Well, if the person doesn't show up in court, the judge automatically puts out a warrant for their arrest and he forfeits the bond. Then the county attorney um, has a time frame where he can seek for judgment. Then there's going to be a hearing for judgment, and it has to be 60 days. It has to give us enough time to try to find him
Mhm.
and we'll sometimes just fix the problem. Lots of times when they fail to appear, we pick up the phone, we call them, and say, well, my attorney said I didn't have to be there, or I couldn't get on the Zoom call or whatever.
Mhm.
And then we can fix that right away. And
Don't downgrade that because
no,
your relationship with the defendant is so important in that situation because you're taking the fear. I mean, without you in that situation, when they found out there was a warrant for their arrest, they're suddenly scared, they're upset, they don't know what to do. Sometimes they run. And because of your being involved and because of your ability to tell them what has happened, that's what gives them the assurance to come back and fix it really quickly.
yes, yeah, and lots of times it does. It does. But if it doesn't, then if they're not taking our calls and the indemnitor says they don't know, okay, now we got to start looking for them. And if we don't find them in the 60 days when the hearing is, most of the courts are very okay. We'll give you another 30 days,
Mhm.
if you can tell us what you've done. And then they do that. But if you can't find them, then you got to pay the forfeiture. And then once judgment is uh, that when the judge says, okay, you're going to have to pay the forfeiture, then we have 14 days to pay that. Then it's over for us. We bring him back for 18 days later, we're still out the money. So
Wow. Okay,
yeah,
so if you get them back within 60 days,
yeah,
what do you owe to the county?
nothing. If you get them back and get them back in jail, you have to fill out an affidavit that you did the work. Now, some judges get persnickety. Well, what did you really do to get him back? My sheriff arrested him, not you. And then you have to show what work you did, because we've had a history of bondsmen where they wouldn't worry about it until the 60 days, and they'll ask for more time. Then they'll get serious about looking for him, thinking, well, maybe he'll get picked up. And that's the judge is going to want you to show the work you've done. And you better bring a folder with some notes in it so he can.
If you weren't responsible for the arrest, I mean, are you responsible for the bond forfeiture?
You can be. You absolutely can be if the judge doesn't. The judge, if you don't have a good standing with your judge,
Mhm.
he can do that. I've never had that problem. I've always been able to get more
Well,
time.
but, I've
So,
always said that
yeah.
bail is a personal relationships industry, and
Hmm.
so courts reward people who take care of business, and judges who know that you're taking care of business are gonna have a perception of how they're gonna react to that, and people who have a reputation for not taking care of business, they're gonna have a different reaction.
Oh, sure, because judges and sheriffs and county attorneys, and they all talk, and they know who's being not a very good bondsman,
Mhm.
who's taking advantage of the system.
In
And
Texas, we have 6 months on a misdemeanor to get them to return, and then we have 9 months on a felony, but we still owe court costs. So that can be 350, 450, $550 per case, even after we get them back. So if
oh,
you posted a $500 bond that's a misdemeanor and they fail to appear and you get them back, you could still end up paying more than $550 in court costs. And that's always due on a failure to appear.
that's interesting. I
Yeah.
don't know if I'd like that.
Well, we've been having this fight about what court costs, what valid court costs are, and there was an argument about whether civil filing fees even applied. But the Court of Criminal Appeals just resolved that in the last 6 months, and it resolved it against the bondsman. I argued a case probably 15 years ago on the issue, and they reserved it for another day. And I've been telling bondsmen for many, many years, I think we're right on the law, but I think we're wrong on the politics, and I think that's what happened. I think the ultimate opinion of the Court of Appeals was not correct, but they have the final say. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals is the highest court in the land on criminal matters, and bail is a criminal matter.
Yeah,
And so we're stuck with it. We have to deal with that, and that's impacting the whole state.
yeah.
Um, let's talk a little bit about your decision to run for PBUS president. I mean, what is the administrative makeup of PBUS?
Well, I was sitting at executive vice president, but our previous president Topo, he'd come down with cancer, and
Mhm.
and what we make a joke about it amongst my board members is it's been a tough position to be president, because
Mm.
you had Topo's deal, but before that we lost a president. Beth Chapman, as you know, she passed away from cancer. After her was Mark Outton, and he almost died. He had an intestinal
Yeah, he had an issue
thing.
too.
Yeah, and he got sick, and then Topo got sick, and I said, "Oh man, if I get sick or something, I'm going to warn every new president of the
Well, it
situation."
seems like PBUS has first executive vice president,
Yeah,
second
you have
executive, something like
executive,
that.
right? Executive president, then you got a senior vice president, then a vice president, then you got a secretary and treasurer. So yeah,
Is
you've
that
got
the board?
three.
I mean, how many board members are there?
Well, executive board, there's obviously the president,
Sure.
executive vice president. Okay. Then you have at-large members, and you have regional. And right now we're talking about making fewer regional, because it's um, a lot of our good leadership bondsmen that would be good leaders are all in Texas. There's a lot of them in Texas.
Hmm.
There's a lot of them in Florida. But when you got states like Colorado, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, all that, we don't have anybody that wants to even be on the board there. It's not that well represented. So I actually covered that territory myself from Kansas.
So how does PBUS act? Does it act through you? Does it act through the executive board? Does it act through the entire board?
The bylaws say certain things got to be voted on and things like that.
Mhm.
The executive board really runs the ship. We meet probably weekly and talk about things. And there's a lot of things every week, there's something coming up. And then if we think, okay, we've got to get the board involved, then we call a meeting with the board and then we vote on certain things. I don't like doing one issue for a board of directors meeting. And we meet twice a year. We have board
Mhm.
meetings there. It's kind of like Texas. It's a lot like Texas. Texas kind of is the same way, aren't they? In the executive board. Of course,
Yes,
you.
we have we have an executive board and then we have board members at large. I'm a board
Mhm.
member. And there's certain actions the president can take. She can approve payments under $1,000. But other than that, I mean, it requires board approval. Um,
Mine's
but we don't have a
2,500.
lot. We don't have a lot of board meetings. I mean, we probably have 3 board meetings a year, and then we'll have special ones when issues arise. We just had a special one a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the
we've had some. Yeah,
I mean, I like the idea of herding cats, but you really get this core group where you can rely upon their advice. And you know, we have a group that's been accused of running PBT, and my wife's like, "Y'all don't run PBT. Y'all just are the ones that are active, and you argue the issues, and the people that listen are persuaded by that." I mean,
that's true.
if people made other persuasive arguments, they'd listen to that. And we had a period where we were split, and we made a couple of decisions that the result was by one vote. And we've never been like that before or since.
Well, when we have a vote, I've chose. Other presidents have, but I've chose. I don't vote. The president doesn't vote. The only time I
Mhm.
vote is if there's a tie. And I've told everybody, if there's a tie, I'm going to vote no. Because if we've got that much controversy, whatever the issue is,
Mhm,
I'm
mhm.
going to vote no because the ones that want it haven't swayed everybody else. We got to have more. I don't
And
mind
more,
a
yeah.
yeah, I don't mind
I
a
like that. I like that a
separate.
lot.
Yeah,
If we're going to be a split and it requires your vote, you're going to vote no because
yeah,
then and I agree with the thought that then we need to have more discussion on it if we're that
yes,
divided.
yes,
Because I mean, if you're divided, that divisions grow when you're in an organization. We have people that once you get divisions, then people start. Well, other things grow as well, and I couldn't say anything
yeah.
without
Then
without
it gets
looking.
ugly. Then it gets
Yeah.
ugly, and then you got
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's reverse.
Okay.
We've both had times where we've been in an organization where it was divided. How do you how do you get past that? I mean, what was in your experience with PBUS? How did you get past the period of division?
I'm probably the biggest one, and I'm not speaking ill of the dead. Beth had a very strong attitude about one way, and that's really where we really uh, had a big division. And she was she brought a lot of people to PBUS that weren't ever
Mhm.
coming, and a lot of them stayed and become good leaders. But it was a big fraction. I mean, the insurance companies were mad. Everybody was just either you were this way or that, and it took we're still fixing that problem. Truthfully,
The analogy I would make, especially to that situation, is Beth was a very strong personality, but she
mm-hmm.
was a lot like my dad, and saw everything in a black and white world,
Yeah,
and sometimes it was gray. And my
yeah,
dad was on city council for many years, and he would call me, and he was like, "We need to sue this guy," and I was like, "Dad, it's not just black and white. It can be gray and get to the
yeah,
same result you want and not be your idea." And that's one of the ways you build coalitions. It doesn't have to be your idea every time. It doesn't have to be your way. There are grays. Everything is not black and white. And he had a difficult time seeing it, agreeing with me in that. And so I think that, well,
yes. A good example of that with PBUS is we've had as you know, Wayne Lozier was a controversial. Well, he was a federal case, and there the past president Topo was passionate and really wanted to be involved in this and that, and I wasn't. So I was against the idea. I didn't want to condone a man breaking the law, going and picking somebody up, and getting labeled with that. and we went back and forth and back and forth. But when he lost his case, then he filed for an appeal, and then Topo come, can we file a amicus brief? And I remember talking with you and Cal Williams, another attorney, and it come up to, this is not a bad thing for us to be involved with. We need to do this. And there's your compromise or your coalition. Then everybody pulled together and said, yeah, we're going to file a amicus brief about what, and it was really a great amicus brief. Thank you very much. I use that today when I go and educate judges about bail bond profession, because the thing of it is, people don't realize when they talk about judges and bail bond, if you talk to judges, that's only maybe 5 or 10% of the thing on their docket. They worry about who's going to get the children in a divorce, or am I going to send this guy to prison, or that. Most of the judges I talked to, they said, I wish I could just delegate that part, the bail bond forfeiture, to someone else to do. I don't like being in trouble with it. And most of them will say, I don't quite have a grasp or an understanding of it. That amicus brief, I printed it out. It's my Bible. I carry it with me. It's in my car. And if I go talk to a judge, I can show them, and a lot of them will say, email this to me. I'd like to keep this. So that's how we educate the judges on that.
Probably the best compliment I ever received on, bail law. I have a practice guide that I wrote, but before that, I went to see a judge and I was talking to the prosecutor, and he said, I really don't know much about bail. And the judge said, I found a really good summary about the bail law, and I keep it and I look at it all the time. And he said, I'll give you a copy of it. He printed it out. And it was a 1-page summary of all of bail law in Texas. And at the very bottom, it said, written by Ken Good. And I was like,
to make you feel so good.
I know. I was like, I did not pay him to say that. But it's also, I didn't write that for y'all. I wrote that for bondsmen. So, but it's interesting when you see those things come back being used. And it's a nice compliment. But I thought it was interesting that you raised the issue of the Lozier amicus brief, because that goes back to an issue of a bounty hunter, and the bounty hunter who's licensed in Louisiana, who goes to Missouri to recover somebody. And the problem is he picks them up and may have made, I mean, if you look at the press release from the U.S. Attorney's Office, may have misrepresented that he was a local police officer when he went into the house. And then when they discovered that he was not a police officer, he was a bounty hunter, he stopped on his way to a gas station, and she started, the defendant started raising Cain, and the police were called, and they were calling and telling him, turn around, come back. You don't have the authority to arrest that person. And he was not licensed in Missouri. And so he was eventually charged under the federal kidnapping law when he crossed state lines. And he went to trial, like you mentioned. And the issue that he was licensed in Louisiana came up. He was not licensed in Missouri, and they kept saying he was not licensed, but he also didn't notify them he was going into the house, which I thought that was interesting, that they kept saying both of those things at the same time. And he was tried to a jury, convicted, and he received a sentence of 10 years in the federal pen. And so that's currently up on appeal. And, I know that during, as you said, there was discussions about whether PBUS should get involved in that, and whether, I think there was another group as well, but I mean, that was like the first thing you had to face as the new PBUS president.
Yeah, and it was. I think we made a good decision. The thing that got me was, that's the very first federal case. I've got a bunch of articles in 2023. There was 56 different bondsmen nationwide situation articles. I've got them. I kept them. 56 cases where they were arrested for either illegal entry, kidnapping, illegal restraint. Okay, a triad of things, which tells me there's at least one bondsman nationwide or bounty hunter arrested a week. And that's not acceptable numbers. We need to really, PBUS needs to really focus on trying to get the people to understand they got to follow the law. Some of the things, they just had another case in Missouri. It was a Missouri bondsman. He went to the sheriff, showed all the creds, showed the warrant. It was in Columbia, Missouri. He was from Missouri. The case was from Missouri. Went in and made the arrest, not too much argument with the defendant. He was there. They got in. They made the arrest. But the family member uh, started to get out of my house, do this and that. So they pulled a gun on the household person, not the defendant, and put him in his chair and left. And of course, they got arrested. Did they break the law? Well, I think you point a gun at me at my house, I would probably call the law too. And I told those people that, why didn't you fill out an incident report and get ahead of it? You wait for and so when they got him back to somewhere close to Kansas City and made the arrest or brought in the defendant, they arrested him. So that's the most recent one I've had here lately that I'm trying to figure out how we're going to get involved with this, because
In Texas, there's this, I think there's a statute about what recovery agents or private investigators can do. And I think one of the requirements says you can't use lethal force. And so I wonder how many other states have a requirement that says you cannot use lethal force.
Well, it's stupid. That gun could have accidentally went off. It's not good.
Well, I mean, you can't say it's stupid because they're making snap decisions
Yeah.
and trying to do, the work to get dangerous or potentially dangerous
Yeah.
criminals back to court. So it could, in that situation, it turned out not to be a wise decision, but in the next decision or the next situation, it could have been what prevented them from being killed. So, I mean, I'm always very leery about second guessing a snap decision, but I agree with you. It was not smart to be mad at somebody and pull out a gun when it's a family member and not the defendant.
Well, and that I've told you the limited facts because I really don't have all the facts. I'm going to get them. But the thing that really disturbed me is one of the instructors for bail enforcement, it also instructs policemen, went to testify as an expert witness on behalf of the defendant. And they said, well, are you a lawyer? And they said, no, we instruct. You can't address any of the statutes or the laws in Missouri unless you're a lawyer. And that's their way of shutting him down, and they didn't get to speak on behalf of the defendant. That's the thing that disturbs me, that we can't have our people talk about it.
In the Lozier case, when I first got a call about it, they were saying they wouldn't let him talk about he was licensed in Louisiana. They wouldn't let him talk about this or that. And that's not true. All that came out. But what really upset me on the Lozier case was he tried his whole case on the theory that he was licensed in Louisiana. That's what he told the jury. Well, in the jury instructions, the judge just cut his knees out from under him by saying, here's your instruction on the law. If he was not licensed under Missouri law, and if he did not notify the local police that he was going to enter the house, you must find that he acted improperly. Well, then why did he try his case? I mean, on that silly theory, on the theory that, hey, I acted properly because I was licensed in Louisiana. He had his whole case cut out from under him by the judge in the instructions to the jury.
I think that's what fired me up about filing the amicus brief. When I finally got the transcripts, I didn't really get them, but when I got all that, oh man, this is not good. We've got to make a stand here. So that's why we did.
You and I have known each other for several years now, and Kansas has started its own podcast, and Bail in the Midwest. Talk about what is the thought behind, or what do you think about these podcasts today, like us, the Bail Post and the Bail in the Midwest, and what is the value of them today?
Well, it's something people can go and look at. I mean, you just did one with Kim Ogg. I've yet to finish it. I've always been getting interrupted. I'm excited to hear what she had to say. We interviewed our lobbyist, and he showed different things. We interviewed a public defender, Joy, and she said, nobody likes attorneys, criminal attorneys, until it's your family member that's in trouble. Then everything's against them. And it's really interesting. I enjoy watching them better than I do listening to them. I like the idea of using. I'm glad we've evolved to video. The audio, I turn on when I'm driving down the road.
And I mean, honestly, when we were looking at starting a podcast, our PR team, Karen Elliott, recommended, hey, why don't we start a podcast? And we didn't know what a podcast was. We had to spend 6 months researching. how do you start it? How do you set up a name? How do you do artwork? And I mean, we had to set up a committee, and we spent all this time on it. And uh, I think it's really been a good decision. But I don't know if I thought that originally. Just thought it was a big waste of time for very few people that would listen to it. And then I started realizing we can address really good issues. We can
Yes.
educate lawmakers and the public, but I would say our target is really the lawmaker staff. So if you want to know what the New Jersey plan is, we have a episode on it. You want to know about charitable bail
Exactly.
funds? We have 2 episodes on it. Kim Ogg talks about it at the very end of her podcast. You
Yes.
you want to know what's going on in Harris County? We have 3 or 4 episodes, but the most important one is the one you just discussed with Kim Ogg, which was just our last episode, and it has taken off. But it's because Kim Ogg really, I would say, tells a lot of stuff that she would have not otherwise told, but for the fact that she was defeated and she felt free to suddenly talk about things. We'll talk about the
Yes.
future. What's the future hold for PBUS? What do you think?
Well, our mission, I guess, or my mission is whatever, is to try to educate the public about the bail bond profession. We need to let them know we really have a purpose. We have taken a lot of ugly hits about this, and I really want them to know that look, we're here. When they say I'd like to say we make bail affordable. When there's a
Mhm.
$50,000 bond on a school teacher's son who's in trouble, they can't come up with the 50,000. They barely can come up with the 5,000. We make it to where they can get their son out. It's affordable now. But when they talk about bondsmen are just greedy people, I can line the people up, tell you I've helped a lot of people. Bondsmen help family when they're in need. And we need to really get some good testimony and things. I've got a gal that accidentally set her house on fire. She thought somebody was in her house. So she started a grease fire. Well, she put some grease on her skillet for a fire to defend herself. She wasn't very smart. I'm going to say that, but anyway, she'd called the police, and the person did leave when they heard her or whatever. So they called and she called and said, "Well, don't don't send. You don't have to send the police, but you need to send the fire truck. I've got a fire in my house." So they
Mhm.
arrest her for arson, and
Mhm.
she wasn't the smartest person in the world. But we did bond her out. But it took a lot of work, and here's why: she wasn't from the United States. She was from Iran.
Mhm.
She worked for Sprint phone company. She had a pension, but it was too big of a risk for me to just say I believe you. So we took
Mhm.
the 50,000 in collateral cash, and I told her, look, you can use this money to pay the damage because you're going to be probably found guilty of this. And that's what we eventually did. We just paid off paid the insurance company the damages, and the bond was set aside. By the way, she went back to Iran. she
Mhm.
she did show in court, and we don't
Well,
cost the taxpayers anything. So they keep forgetting that.
Well, it seems like bail is, the bail industry is the low hanging fruit, the easy target, the ones
Yeah.
that's always, nobody trusts, and it's kind of opaque. But what the public doesn't know is, I always like to say the bail bondsmen are the grease that keeps the conveyor belt of the criminal justice system working. And we've learned from during COVID, these simple release mechanisms that we're seeing across the country do not work and
Mhm.
carry with them high failure to appear rates. I mean, if you're going to compare a less than 10% failure to appear rate to a 80% failure to appear rate in misdemeanor court in Harris County, and according to the Yolo County DA, all misdemeanor courts in the state of California, well, that's not a comparison. There was a judge who was on a News Nation town hall that said, until you have an alternative to the private industry that has the same low failure to appear rate and the same high level of accountability, you don't have an alternative. And so what we're seeing in our urban areas, especially, is we're seeing they're doing other things that are not alternatives. And that explains why we're creating chaos and we're creating situations where they can't hold anybody accountable because they just have all their systems collapsing. But we seem to be kind of coming out of that period a little bit, but we're
I
still
feel.
under attack.
Yeah, I feel. Yeah. We have to, and then the deal is we have to educate new law. Every time a new lawmaker gets elected, we have to let those people be known of what we do. And then new county attorneys. I don't know how many times I've had to educate new county attorneys, prosecutors
Mhm.
that come and says, "You bondsman," and then now let's talk.
Mhm.
Take them out to lunch and just then they realize we're just people trying to do the right thing. And I always say, look, if there's something I'm doing wrong and you don't like, pick up the phone and call me.
Mhm.
Call me before or call the judge. And the judge will pick up the phone and call me.
Yeah.
And I've never had one of those phone calls.
So if people wanted to find out more about you or PBUS, how would they, what would they do?
Well, you can visit the website. Our website is pretty explanatory. And we've got some.
Wait, what
It's a
is the
good
website?
website. It's
PBUS?
pbus.com.
Okay.
Yeah, pbus.com. Or you can pick up phone call Michelle Tremaine, and she would be more than happy to take your phone call, and she will direct you in the right direction. Because if it's something about membership, we've got a membership
Mhm.
chair, Chris Keaton doing a wonderful job. If it's something about bylaws, that's Cal Williams and Jeff Kirkpatrick. And I really like my committees to do the work. I like for them to report to
Mhm.
me once a week of what's going on. That's really the nuts and bolts and keeps the machine going.
When's y'all's
And
next meeting?
well, our next one is in Mobile at the end of the July. It's the 28th to the 31st. Really good one because that one we're taking a bring your lobbyist to camp or
Mhm.
whatever you want to say. So we're having all the lobbyists come to talk to the bondsman on how to help the lobbyists when they're working a bill and not to sabotage the law. Sometimes
Mhm.
these bondsmen think, well, I want to talk to mine and we do this and that, and they may be not helping their lobbyist work. That lobbyist knows how to do his job or her job. Let them do it. Then the other thing we're going to do is try to get a workshop on how to draft a bill.
Mhm.
Each state wants different bills, and we're going to try to get the rudiments of that knocked out of the way because some of these younger, Colorado is one that I'm real excited that they're coming there because they're going to learn a lot on how to work a bill. I'm going out to Colorado here in 3 days and they're meeting with all their House of Representatives. I think it is a lobbyist is having an after-hour cocktail hour, and I've told them don't talk about bail, just talk to the people, just talk to
Yeah.
them. But it'll make it easier when you want to talk to them. You can walk into their office and say hi to them. Things like that. They need to learn some of the basics how to work out in
Yeah,
the.
we had a group bring a bill into Texas one time, and when they came to us, they said, "You don't need to do anything to this. We've already presented it to whoever," and we're looking at it and we're like, "This ain't going to work in Texas. I mean, Texas doesn't have this system, so it doesn't work." So 2 months later, they came back to us and said, "Well, we heard back from our people, and they say this doesn't work for Texas, and so I guess we're just done. We're just going to give up." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, guys. Why don't you give us the weekend to try to turn this into something that works in Texas?" And so we did. And then what do you know? They went back
Success.
and it became the foundation of the bill. And so, I mean, it's very important to find people who know what the local system is because any bill you want to present, we can make it something for your state. We just need to know what that system is. And
Yes.
you got to rely upon the people that know. And David, I'm so happy to talk to you today, and thank you so much for
Oh,
talking about
thank
PBUS.
you.
But it's nice to get to know you. I mean, we've talked for a couple of years because you've been attending some of our meetings, and so it's nice to get to know you better.
Thank you.
All
It
right.
really is.
Thank you for listening and come back for the next episode of The Bell Post.